Well, I've let this settle in for a few days. And I'm not done with the grieving process yet with the Milwaukee Brewers. I know it's eventually time to move on, but it was such a disappointing ending. Got some more thoughts on the way the season ended and maybe a few things to look forward to. All that's next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Boy, about a week ago, we were just getting ready to look ahead to the New York Mets. The Mets had won their series, one of those games against the Atlanta Braves in come from behind fashion, and it was like, bring on the Mets. And I said right here on the podcast, I said, we should all be careful of what we are hoping for because it always comes back to bite us. 2011, we wanted St. Louis to beat Philadelphia. St. Louis did in their divisional series, came to Milwaukee and beat Milwaukee in the NLCS in 6 games nonetheless. The Mets were doing all this traveling. They were here in Milwaukee 2 weekends ago, and then they had to go down to Atlanta a week ago, and then they were flying back up to Milwaukee. And they beat the Brewers 2 of 3, and here we are. The Mets are still playing, very much alive in their series with Philadelphia. And we're looking back at a Brewers team that we're wondering, what went wrong? Hi, everybody. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This podcast is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. I went on the podcast on one of my shorts on last Wednesday when they were down 0-1 in the series. And I said, the Brewers owe this to us to win this game tonight. And they did. The Brewers came back and they did win that game. And then there was Thursday, and it's like, they owe us another one. One game isn't good enough. They won 93 games in the regular season. They hit the 2-run blast. They get the 2 solo home runs, the 2 runs in the 7th inning. And we're thinking life is good. Devin Williams coming on in the top of the 9th inning and gives up a 3-run tank to Pete Alonso, a guy who I talked about in this podcast, who I'd love to see the Brewers I would love to see the Brewers get as a first baseman in the offseason. Remember that? Some of the episodes I talked about this past winter. I said, well, he's got a year left on his arbitration. Maybe the Mets aren't expecting much this year. There was some rumors he was on the trade block. Let's trade for Pete Alonso. Well, it turns out they signed Rhys Hoskins. And Alonso didn't have the greatest year with the Mets, but he came through when his team needed him most. And then Thursday night, Williams gives up that tank to Devin Williams. And all you can talk about when you run into people, my son had a wedding this weekend. When you bring the Brewers, what's the first thing we talk about? What heartbreak, what disappointment. They did it to us again. Same old Brewers. I've seen it all, and I get it. I get it. And it's like, how many times can we believe in this team? 93. How much more can we believe? 93 wins. And you know the playoff history. You all know that. But this time, 93 wins. You got the best closer in baseball on the hill. All right? You got a pitching staff that's been great. Sure, like in that Game 3, how many times have we seen the Brewers get into a scoreless tie in the 7th inning? Now, they get the home runs. Okay, they get the home runs, and we're thinking, it's two not. Because how many times in the last couple of years and I've said this, have the Brewers scored a minimal amount of runs, and we're hoping and praying that the pitching staff can come through? Yeah, don't blame Devin Williams. Yeah, he gave up a 3-run home run, but it's not Devin Williams. There was some scattered boos when he got taken out of the game, but it's not a Devin Williams. They could have scored more runs in this game. The offense could have got more runs. I mean, Tobias, the rest of the pitching staff did well. Williams had a bad outing at the worst possible time. Eckersley gave up the home run to Kirk Gibson in 88. I mean, there's stories of that where great players just fail in big moments. And great players like Pete Alonso come through. It is so disappointing. It's so disappointing. There's no other word. They let us down again. There's no way to sugarcoat that. And I said this too, this best of 3, and I'm not blaming it on this. I just talked to a buddy of mine, Mike. And who knows, in a long series, maybe the Brewers win this, a 5 or 7 game series. And I know you can't go 7 in an opening. And I'm not blaming it again on losing this series because of a short series. But you got to avoid the wild card. Let's do better than that. Let's get that first or second seed. That's why I wanted that top seed so much. Some people said to me, no, we need the Brewers to keep that thing going. We can't have them rest. Look at the Dodgers last year. They rested till Saturday. I'll tell you, hey, the less series you got to play, the better. I didn't want to. Who wanted to play that first series? Some of you guys wanted to play a series to tune up for the NLDS. Like they were going to be Kenny J. Like the Brewers were just going to roll over the Brooklyn Brawler. No. Everybody's in the playoffs for a reason. Everybody. The Mets could win the World Series. That's why I said the Brewers could have been there. And again, the thought out there, well, the Brewers would have just gone to Philadelphia and got killed anyway. Huh? Absolutely not. If it happens, it happens. But there, in no way, not one part of me didn't think that the Brewers could either bust out in the first round or go to the World Series and win a championship. The Brewers didn't have to. I mean, I'm watching Philadelphia and the Mets. The Brewers don't have to take a backseat to either one of those teams. The Padres, the Dodgers, none of those teams. You know, the Dodgers got the high-priced guys, but don't have to take a backseat to any of those guys. This was a window of opportunity for the Milwaukee Brewers, and another season has passed. Now, I know there's a lot going on for this team in the future. I know that. And we got a lot of time in the offseason to talk about that. So I can't look at it like, well, our time is eventually going to come. Who knows? How many times have we thought the Milwaukee Bucks, well, they're set up for a while. Giannis, this won't be the only championship they win in 2021. They can't even get out of the early rounds of the playoffs these days. The Packers, after winning the Super Bowl in 2010 season, won it in 2011, in the winter of 2011. Hey, they may win 2 in a row. We're still waiting on that. Can't even get back to the NFC Championship game anymore. So when you have an opportunity, you got to take it. So I can't look at it like, well, next year we'll get them. This was an opportunity this year. You had so many things going for you. You played such smart baseball all season long. You had the bullpen that was great. Best bullpen in baseball. I chatted them up like you wouldn't believe. I bought into it too. But this is the way it goes in baseball. This is the sad way it goes in baseball, in any sport, man. You know, it does. This is why they played this postseason. It's wild. It's crazy. Like I said, the Mets, what's the story? Every time the Brewers lose in the postseason, the team they lose to in the postseason goes on to the World Series. That's a fact. And it has nothing, and that doesn't make me feel any better or any worse about the Brewers. When I hear that, that doesn't mean, oh, yeah, we lost to a team that's going to the World Series. No, that doesn't make me feel any better, because the bottom line is it's another season. 6 of the last 7 years, the Brewers have made the postseason, and they have failed. It's another failure by the Milwaukee Brewers. No way to sugarcoat it. We've gone 54 years without winning a championship. And you know what's going to happen? You same fans and me, we'll be right back there on opening day, cheering these guys on. We love the journey. We just can't complete the journey. And there's got to be some way. The Brewers got to get by, get a top 2 seed. Now, they were picked to win. What was the Vegas over-under? 76.5 wins. They flew over that total. Nobody expected that. Nobody expected 76.5 wins. Nobody expected 93. I had Doug Russell on last week. He was hoping for 74 wins. That was a lot, and he's not the only one. What is it going to take for this team to get a top 2 seed, to avoid that wild card round? I know 2021, they lost in the divisional round to Atlanta, but they have to somehow get by, and it's not easy. A 1 or 2 seed. Philadelphia, 2 giants ahead of the Brewers. They may have the big payrolls, But I feel like the Brewers do so many things the right way, but it didn't turn up in the postseason. The small margin of error that we want it for that has to occur for the Milwaukee Brewers, well, they made some mistakes. You can't have Devin Williams give up a 3-run home run. You can't have Payamps fail to cover first base. You can't have Payamps blow up in a game. All right? You got to have your starters go more than 4 innings. They tried bullpenning their way, and it was all set up in game 3. Bullpenning their way in game 1 didn't work out. The bullpen got blasted for 5 runs in the 5th inning in game 1. And some of you blame it on starting pitching. Maybe if Corbin Burns is on this team. But then, he blew up last year. Still, he had a great season with Baltimore. Baltimore's out. Burns, I thought, pitched great in the game for the Orioles. Still, they lost 1-0 to Kansas City. Ultimately, you got to hit the baseball. You got to be able to score some runs. You can have a great bullpen. You can have a great starting staff. I saw this with the Braves in the 90s. They had the Maddoxes, and I'm not comparing the Brewers staff to this by any means, but they had Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz. They had Hall of Famers, and they won 1 World Series. They should have won 6 or 7, but their offense couldn't do a darn thing in the postseason, and ultimately they would lose in the postseason. 93 wins, and we're sitting in this spot again. I know a lot of the Milwaukee Brewer pessimism was out there, and I get it. And some of you guys came after me, and don't blame me. Oh, Chuck, you were too high on the Milwaukee Brewers. Well, I had every reason to be high about the Milwaukee Brewers. To go to the World Series and maybe win a championship. That team was good enough. That team was a smart, fundamentally sound team. Pat Murphy, Manager of the Year, in my opinion, did a great job. Never lost more than 3 in a row. I mean, that team just found a way to get wins. And as it was, even when Alonso hit that tank in the bottom of the 9th inning, I thought, okay, bottom of the 9th inning, something's going to happen. They get off the leadoff base hit, and then Terang bounces to that bang, bang, double play. The crowd is up, man, at first, 1 out. Bang, bang, double play. And you're just like sitting there with your jaws hanging out, where 15 minutes earlier, we thought we were headed to the divisional series. Alonso hits the home run, and then a bang, bang, double play. Like, wow, this is really over. It really was. It was just a shocker. It was a shocker. And yeah, it haven't come down from it. We're going to be getting into the off season and all that, but it was, at the bottom line, an utter disappointment for the Milwaukee Brewers. They failed us again. The Brewers owe us some playoff appearances, some more playoff appearances, and playoff victories, more importantly, and championships. Because you fans out there, you keep going out there and supporting this team like you should. 40,000 for a playoff game again. A Sunday afternoon, 40,000. The fans come out. Even on a Packers Sunday, the fans are filling up the stands, spending their good, hard-earned money to go support this team. You deserve a winner. You deserve a championship. You deserve a playoff round. We'll get more into this coming up next. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day here on Locked On Brewers. We'll be here all fall, all winter long, getting you ready for next year, talking about the offseason. It's going to be a busy offseason like it always is. Somebody asked me, God, now where do you go on your Locked On Brewers? Yeah, I'd like to be talking about the postseason right now, but eventually here we got to move on and talk about, you got arbitration, got a lot of things coming up ahead. Free agency, who's coming back, who's not coming back. There's a lot to be decided for the Milwaukee Brewers here in the weeks and months to come. We'll have it all covered here on Locked On Brewers. All right, like most of us, collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a rookie card, just not in the cards. Literally, I love collecting, but some serious money to drop once in a while. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of the retail price. Every card that I listed was hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and a clear hit rates for each and every one. Arena Club club packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. And right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB. You got to use that promo code LockedOnMLB. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB. Code LockedOnMLB for 10% off your first purchase. I love collecting cards. My collection, I love it. I'm proud of it. And if you're into collecting cards like I am, thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com. It's a great way to go. Again, use that promo code LockedOnMLB. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Our podcast, by the way, for those of you watching us on YouTube, we're on Google, Spotify, Apple, on all the major downloads. And also, you get us on YouTube. Search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, and that'll alert you every time we drop an episode on Locked On Brewers. Great story. A buddy of mine who I grew up with, 9, 10, 11 years old in my neighborhood, moved away one day, and he was doing a search. He's a big Mets fan. Was doing a search for information about the Mets last week. Comes across my podcast some 40 years later, writes me on Twitter and finds me on Twitter and just reconnected with him today. How about that? This Locked On Brewers, small world, got me connected with an old childhood friend. Mike, appreciate you doing that. And yeah, great to reconnect, and won't be the last time we reconnect. The Milwaukee Brewers. Well, they do have some answers, some questions in the offseason. We're going to have to talk about Adames and the thought of maybe trading Devin Williams. John Heyman says some of the same teams out there will be interested in Adames, and we've talked about that. The Dodgers, Atlanta, San Francisco. And Atanasio is not going to ante up. He was talking last week about he put the offer on the table for CC Sabathia. And he said by the time we put the offer on the table for Sabathia, I think it was 4 years, $100 million, the Yankees had like doubled it or whatever and upped it some more. And he said, well, there's no way we could re-sign CC Sabathia. Had they re-signed CC, but think about this. If they re-signed CC Sabathia in 2008, 2009 and 2010 were terrible years. They weren't going to the postseason with CC anyway. 2011, they might have been able to have him on the roster. It would have certainly helped them in 2011 when they went to the postseason. But 2009, 2010, had they signed CC in 2008, they might have traded him in 2009 and 2010 anyway, because those Ken Mackey years. Oh, that wasn't. Yeah, it was Ken Mackey years. They were going nowhere. They were going nowhere fast, and then Renicky came along. But with Adames now, I mean, you could make arguments on both sides of this deal, whether they should re-sign him or not. I mean, there's plenty of reasons why you should sign him. And there's also reasons why maybe you shouldn't re-sign him. You do have Ortiz to move over to shortstop. You could buy yourself a third baseman in the offseason whom you might have to not have to pay as much as Willy Adames. You know, with Adames off the books, better use that money to be spending it on some players. Okay? Because that's money you could have put towards Adames, but you better put it towards some other players. You know, you don't have to spend $30 million on a guy, but still, you should be able to spend some money. You're going to have to spend the $18 million on Rhys Hoskins. There was an article in the Journal Sentinel talking about Rhys, that it sounds like Rhys wants to come back. It's his option on $18 million and then a $4 million buyout the next year. He's not going to have a lot of takers out there after his terrible season. God, I just love that move so much. I thought I would have guessed he would have hit 30 to 35 home runs. I predicted it. He didn't do it. And I don't want to say we're stuck with Rhys, but Rhys is coming back. I'm hoping that the knee gets better for another year and he has a better season next year. But when you're pinch hitting for Rhys Hoskins in a postseason game, you know, you're spending $18 million next year on a guy who's playing first base. You shouldn't have to be pinch hitting for a guy, righty or lefty on the mound. Now, it worked out. Bauer hit the home run, but the fact that you even got a pinch hit for one of your so-called, who you thought was going to be a heart of the order, one of your best hitters on the team, that's scary. I mean, you would never pinch hit for Contreras or Adames. Guys like that, you would never pinch hit for, righty or lefty on the hill. But they did it with Hoskins. I understand it, but that's how they felt about Hoskins at that point. But they have no choice. It's Hoskins, his option. About a month ago, I was like, Hoskins, he's going to have a big offseason. He did nothing in the big postseason. He did nothing in the postseason. Absolutely nothing in the postseason in 3 games. Small sample size, but I don't care. It's 3 games, and he didn't do anything in the postseason. He didn't do anything at all. Another topic we're going to have to talk about is trading Devin Williams. Right now, I'm leaning toward it. And it's not because he gave up the 3-run home run. I talked about this last season. He's going into the final year of arbitration with the Brewers. He's going to make about $10 million this year. The Brewers are just known for not giving closers long-term deals. They just won't. They didn't do it to Josh Hader, and he was ticked every year that he had to go to arbitration. And I'm sure that bothers Devin. I don't know for a fact, but I'm sure he's got a chip on his shoulder for that. They will not give him a long-term contract. So he either goes to his final year of arbitration and then hits the free agent market, or you trade him this winter. I say you trade him. You got McGill there. I'm not saying McGill is Devin Williams, but I want to see them trade Devin Williams because only the fact that you'll get a load back from him. I really do. I think you'll get a good return for Devin Williams. What other contender out there wouldn't want to trade for Devin Williams for the back end, the best closer in baseball, at the back end of their bullpen? We'll see. I would think that he is on the trade block. The Brewers are going to hold the end of the season press conference later on in the winter, later on this week, I believe Wednesday or Thursday. And we'll talk about that on the podcast. But he'll be asked that, Matt Arnold, and he's not going to say, oh, yeah, we're definitely trading Devin Williams in the offseason. He's not going to say that. He'll say the typical company like Devin's, just like he said with Corbin Burns. Corbin, very important part of this staff, very important part of this team. And there he goes off to Baltimore. And I get it. I mean, Arnold's not going to give us the keys to the kingdom, as Ted Thompson would say. But I would say look for Devin Williams to be traded in the offseason. Adames is gone. Don't even hold out any hope that Adames is going to stick around. Adames will be gone, and Rhys Hoskins, I believe, will be back. We'll be back. All right, we'll head down the home stretch of this podcast and wrap it up. Coming up after this timeout here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Booking.com. Well, I thought maybe if the Brewers were going to go to Philadelphia this past weekend, he could have used Booking.com, but maybe it took a little trip up north. Hey, this is the time of the year to take these little weekend jaunts in Wisconsin. Book on Booking.com. Hey, you want to go to Door County? Maybe you want to rent a little bed and breakfast in northern Wisconsin. This is the time of the year to do it. Wisconsin's a beautiful state in the fall. It's beautiful any time of the year. Well, except for maybe February, but it's a beautiful state. And Booking.com, Booking.yeah, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. Booking.com will help you with bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts. I love to go golfing down at Scottsdale. I use Booking.com to help me by flight, hotel, everything else. They always deliver for me, no matter what city you go to. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Maybe you still want to go to the postseason of the World Series, even though the Brewers aren't involved. Get on Booking.com, Booking.yeah. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's number one sports book. Number one sports book for a reason. You know why? Because Booking.com, I should say because FanDuel has the live betting. They have terrific odds. You look on NFL Sunday, you're going to get some great live odds there. You get a hunch in the middle of the game. You could check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. When you place your first $5 bets, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place that first $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com and check out their page. Beautiful setup, easy to get to, easy to navigate around. And, of course, right now, you got the start of the NBA season weeks away. NHL starting up on Tuesday. You got college basketball running counter, college football as well. Get into the action and get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com, FanDuel.com. Get into the action and find out why FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers. A part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. We got so much to talk about in the days and weeks to come. What went wrong for the Milwaukee Brewers? Like I said, Matt Arnold will be talking to the media in the days to come. I'll be covering that and talking to you about that right here. But let's face it, this is not good enough for us. A nice, happy season. We had a lot of fun covering the 2024 Milwaukee Brewers. But at the end of the day, it's all about winning championships. The shiny 93 wins doesn't mean a hill of beans. We can look and say, oh, yeah, it's a feel-good story and this and that happened. Yeah, okay. And they provided us with a lot of fun in 6 months. But you got to start winning October baseball. You have to start doing it, okay? You got to find a way to get a top 2 seed, and you got to get better. Other teams in this division are going to get better. St. Louis is going through some changes. They're not content where they are. Craig Counsell down in Chicago. Well, his lip service is they have to get better. He says they have to get better than the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers are the standard right now in the NL Central. They're not the standard in the National League. They're the standard in this division, but know that teams are going to get better in the offseason. The Brewers got to get better too. You know, you either get better, you either get worse, you never stay the same. We have a whole couple of weeks here, months to talk about it. We'll be here talking Brewers baseball with you. We still got a lot to talk about with this team. We got a lot to talk about yet this week with this team as well. And no, I'm still in the grieving process. I have not gotten over it. I'm still disappointed. I don't even want to see the Alonso home run. I don't even want to look at it. We'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. All you everydayers, thank you. Google, Spotify, Apple, we're on all the major downloads. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the alert button there. It'll alert you every time we drop an episode. We're not going away. We'll be here always talking Brewers baseball with you. For your next listen, go to Locked On MLB. My guy Sully has got all the look about the playoffs and as the divisional rounds are underway. We'll talk all about that on Locked On MLB. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers. Have yourself a great day, everybody.